What's up, witches? It's Claudia here, and I have some exciting news. Finally, we have created a Patreon. So you can find us at patreon.com/truecrimecovenpod. At the moment, there is only one tier. It's the familiar tier, and it's just where you can chuck us £1 just to help keep us going every month. We aim to expand on this and create new tiers and exciting content. But for now, if you'd like to support us in this way, please do go ahead. That's patreon.com/truecrimecovenpod. Enjoy the episode, guys.
What's up, witches?
Hi, I'm Claudia.
And I'm Jess.
And welcome to True Crime Coven. Hey, Jess.
Hey, Claudia.
How are you?
I'm better than I was a couple of days ago. I've been ill.
Yeah, you've been a bit poorly, and so's baby Orla.
Yeah, she has not been a jolly happy baby.
Oh,
she has been miserable and all bunged up, and I'm glad I'm feeling a bit better because I don't sound as nasally as I did, but I might sound a bit coldy still.
How's Orla doing?
She is a lot better, actually. We went to the GP today, but for unrelated reasons. She had her 6-week check.
Fair. All good?
Yeah, all good. They said she has very good head control for a 6-week-old baby. And I said, I know, she headbutts me a lot.
You were like, yeah, I'm aware.
Yep.
She still looked very cute. Kick. When you sent me the video, was it yesterday, of her like nestling into you? She still looked very cute.
Yeah, her being extra clingy. She just wants to constantly be cuddled.
A better part of you loves that, though.
Yeah, it's quite nice.
It's one of those things that, like, even if it's annoying at the time, you know you've got to save her because it goes so quickly.
I know. I was listening to another podcast the other day, and they were saying how their son always gets in bed with them, and they were like, although it's annoying, they're like, one day he's going to grow up and be a grumpy teenager and not even want to speak to us. So you do have to appreciate while they're little. Yeah,
it's one of those things, isn't it, where it's like you're constantly like sort of battling yourself almost.
Yeah.
For some peace, but knowing that one day you'll hate the peace.
Yeah, one day I'll be like, please just cuddle me like you
just love me. She'll be like, shut up, Mum, I hate you.
I hate you. You're not my friend. I'm going to Nan's. No.
Yeah, your mum is going to be like the safe place of cookies for sure.
Well, I think it might be more my sister because she now lives around the corner, and I think she's going to be like the crazy wine auntie.
Okay, well, I mean, that's a vibe.
Yeah, that's the vibe she's going for.
I live 13 hours away from my nephew, so...
I mean, he could still get on a plane and be like, I'm going to go live with Auntie Claudia. I saw you met him the other day, finally.
Yeah, I mean, he could, but he would have to have £600.
Yeah, fair.
And I did meet him the other day, and he's very cute.
He is very cute.
He is. He's very giggly and happy. He did throw up on me, but it was my fault because I threw him up in the air a few times.
Fair.
They were like, he's going to be sick on you. And I was like, I don't care. He's giggling. I'm making him giggle.
And then he was sick on you.
Yeah, but it's baby sick is the least it's the most inoffensive sick ever. Like, it doesn't even smell.
Is he under 6 months?
Yeah, he's 4 months.
Oh, yeah, so he's just on formula anyway.
Yeah,
so it's just milk.
It's just milk sick, so it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, they do that anyway, even if you don't throw them up in the air, so...
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, at least there was a reason. At least you had fun doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, all positive here.
So I don't really know how to segue from that.
Yeah,
like baby talk to true crime.
Yeah. Yeah, we're just going to have to buy the bullet and go for it.
Yeah. So it feels like forever since we've covered a true crime case. I mean, definitely forever since we have together.
Yeah, since me and you.
But in general, I don't think I've covered a true crime case since Halloween.
Oh, wow. That's
or maybe
almost
just
a month.
before Halloween. Yeah. And for that, I am sorry, but there's a reason. So it's not only because of time and schedules, but also because I have sort of been battling with true crime as a genre, admittedly.
Okay.
And I haven't really spoken to you about this.
No, you haven't.
But I think, so the Dharma documentary, you can't call it documentary because it's so incorrect in parts.
It's like fiction based on true.
Which no one ever needs, by the way. No. It brought forward a lot of people questioning true crime as a genre and the community, if you can call it a community. And rightly so, because we also saw a lot of fans of Jeffrey Dahmer pop up.
Yeah.
There was people on TikToks of like Jeffrey Dahmer earrings and being like, I love him, I don't care. And it's like...
It's dangerous almost in a way.
It's so dangerous and it's so disgusting. It's so rude is
very understatement.
Is an understatement. It's so disrespectful to families of the victims and to victims themselves, survivors and victims.
100%.
And, whilst we've obviously never condoned that, I did have to start to ask myself, are we part of the problem? Are we, as a podcast, because in a way this is entertainment, are we part of the problem? Are we, perpetuating that idea that this can be entertainment and someone's trauma is entertainment?
Not glorifying it, but...
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, if we didn't give it so much attention, the killers themselves wouldn't be so famous and so well known. And,
exactly.
Yeah.
And I had to really sit with that for a bit. Being the one who comes forward with the true crime and being the one who sort of put you about doing this podcast. And so I had to ask, is this podcast part of the problem? And we never want to be.
No.
And with that being said, I kind of want to say, if you ever think that we're not doing the victims justice, or if we're speaking in a way that's disrespectful, I really want you to call us out. I really welcome that. If we lose sight of it, I definitely think we should take a break. But if we lose sight of it, also let us know, because it's not something you can always judge objectively when it's yourself. And additionally, if any families or loved ones ever reach out to us and are ever listening to this and want us to take an episode down, we will. There won't be any questions asked. I don't give a shit about, but that's some of our most listened to episodes. Yeah. And that's not as important as their feelings.
No, we've got to respect the victims and the families of the victims. And if anything is said that is offensive, it shouldn't be on the internet. No,
exactly. Even if people are rude to us about it, we still won't be the victims in that situation.
No.
It's not like, you didn't ask nicely. No, you probably won't if you're upset.
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to, because, we haven't got anyone's permission to talk about their loved one's murder.
I think we both work in a job that has taught us that people do and say things when they're in pain and when they're hurting that they don't necessarily always mean to come across that way.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely had patients be very rude to me. And then, when they're in pain, and then when they've been in less pain, they've apologised, and I don't hold a grudge there. I will say to them, that wasn't acceptable, because I'm also not there to be abused. But
you know why?
Everyone in their life has been short with someone when they've been in a bad mood and had to go back and say, I'm really sorry.
Yeah, when you're tired, you're hungry. I get really hangry.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No one's ever the best. No one's always the best version of themselves.
No, so you've got to appreciate people's wishes.
So if you do ever see an episode disappear, that might be why. And if you ever come across a family or someone we've covered saying that they don't, ever want to come across something they don't like their loved one being spoken about, let us know. We will take that down. We will do whatever we can to make that right as well if extra steps need to be taken, though often I understand they're probably not necessarily aware of this podcast, and therefore I wouldn't want to reach out and add to that trauma by apologising for something they weren't aware of. But the bottom line is, we are not here to cause more trauma and pain to people. We want to highlight crimes, and I hope it's kind of obvious by how much we discuss people's intents that we're more interested in the psychology. I'm not here to go, to revel in the details of how people were killed. That's not my intention. I see enough horrible stuff at work. I'm not getting my fill of it on other people's trauma. I just want to discuss the psychology behind it.
I think it's hard because obviously, as you said, the interest around true crime is for people like me and you. Well, for me, I just couldn't think of how someone got to that point where they could do something so awful. So as you said, it is the psychology behind it and what happened, what were those steps, not celebrating why they did it, is more to how do you go so wrong in life to get to that point? How many failures in the system or whatever to get to that point? And I do truly believe that's what most people who have an interest in true crime, or I hope that's what most people
we hope
are interested in. And I'd like to think that that's what we cover the most on this podcast, as well as respecting the victims. So,
I have had people come to me and say, I really like how well you cover true crime. I think it's really ethical. And that honestly means so much to me. That's one of the biggest compliments
really nice.
You can
We've
get.
We've had a few emails that say that as well.
Yeah. And I hope that is something that most people think, because I feel like when I say to people, I have a true crime podcast, they instantly think and I'm not going to call out any other podcasts, but there's certain ones I don't endorse or listen to because of they literally have a fun take on how to say the word murder. I'm not going to come for them because they've got many fans who could come for us. They're very big. We are very small. But, I never want to sit there and be like, making puns and making jokes. It's just not what I'm here for.
No.
And so I think to be told that we do it ethically is really nice, because I do feel like people instantly jump to the fact that we're probably like, oh, ooky spooky true crime. And like, I've seen tweets that are like, I get murdered. Like, I've seen a tweet that was like someone saying, oh, I get murdered in a park. And then 2 white women on a podcast are like, oh my God, well done. Like, welcome this week. We're going to discuss the ooky spooky murder of blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, that's never what I want to be.
No.
And I understand that's what a lot of people think when I say, I have a true crime podcast.
Yeah. It's hard because there's so many out there as well.
Yeah.
And like, not just podcasts, like documentaries or TV series or YouTube series. And there is a lot out there. So it's hard to distinguish I don't want to say the good from the bad, but
yeah, and I'm not going to say that we always do it perfectly. We're humans and we might get it wrong, but we want to know when we get it wrong, so tell us. And so
God, after that,
sorry, it's a bit heavy, but I mean, what we're talking about is heavy. We're talking about murder. Like, we can't sit here and
you can't make light of it, really.
No.
And
so that might have been also why I've been sort of steering away from covering true crime, because I've just been grappling with, am I part of the problem? And if so, do we need... The thing is, I didn't want to stop the podcast. I thought maybe we needed to go in a new direction with it. I was just thinking maybe we only covered paranormal stories, which would be quite weird considering we're called True Crime Coven. But, I really did have a long, hard think. And the reason I didn't involve you in that is because you had a new baby. And I thought you probably just didn't want to be part of that. But that's where I was at. So it's a tough one.
Do you feel better now?
I do. I think... it's difficult because a lot of people will say that there is no way to have a podcast about true crime that's ethical, and I understand why they think that. I also think that, and I had a conversation with one of my friends. She was saying, I don't like the way the internet has made serial killers famous, and I kind of said to her, actually, I don't think you're correct in that. Last podcast on the left recently covered a case where someone bombed a school. And it was in the 1920s, I think. And people literally went to that town, and one of the firefighters, I think, one of the first responders, made a map that had all the houses of where the victims had lived, and people went and visited them, like did a tour. Like, like you have like Stars of Hollywood house maps, like that, but for child victims of a bombing.
Why would you want that?
Exactly, like fucked up. And
who was going on that tour?
Well, that's the thing. Loads of people did. Like, they had so many people queuing up to get into that town and, like, take home bits of the wreckage and stuff.
Like, it's different reading up about a serial killer and then going on a tour of victims' houses who are children.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
That's a terrorist attack.
Oh, yeah, completely.
Oh.
And then, in Victorian times, they would often go and have picnics at the places where murders had taken place, like crime scenes.
Oh my God.
Because obviously they didn't really have secure crime scenes back then.
Yeah, fair.
And so, whenever people say, oh, it's the internet making it bad, I'm like, no, the internet's making it more well known. People have always been interested in true crime. And there's always been the ones who have taken it way too far, completely crossed the line.
It's when people try to make money off of it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And again, we don't make any money off this. We make £16 a month. That all goes to Simon for editing. And honestly, my goal isn't really to make money from this. If we start making money that is more than just the time we spend researching, I would love to set up a foundation. Like,
oh God, yeah.
I'm not here to make millions off of talking about people's traumas.
No, and also if we were to get more money to fund this podcast, we put it into other avenues of it, not just into like, oh, okay, we'll do like 2 murders a week. Like, no, we're still gonna stick with our foundation, but maybe we'll do like a ghost tour like vlog, or we'll do some merch kind of thing, like if we ever got money from it.
I'm completely not looking to profit off of people's trauma. So I now realise we've spoken for 15 minutes about that, but that was what I've been grappling with, and I think it deserved a little bit of airtime.
And also, if it helps you mentally and helps us figure out what we're going to do with this, then it's good. If it needs to get cut, it gets cut.
Yeah. And I just hope people realise that we're not here, like I said, to put any more negativity into a world that is kind of filled with it. So, there's no easy segue from that to the subject today, because we are going from talking about the efficacy, yeah, of true crime to talking about a murder. But today I wanted to speak about a young woman who was killed in 2021. And in my head, she's kind of part of a group of women that we've lost in the last 2 years. We haven't lost them. They were killed, actually. Lost really downplays it.
Yeah.
And that consists of Sarah Everard, Ashlyn Murphy, who we covered, and Zara Alina, as well as the woman that we're going to cover today.
Okay.
All women killed by men that they didn't know whilst they were just trying to live their lives, just going about their business. Now, Sarah Everard's case got a lot of attention, perhaps because it's sort of the first of the cases. It happened in lockdown as well, when obviously the news was COVID a lot, and then suddenly we had this murder of a woman. Also, the subsequent police brutality at the vigil of Sarah Everard also brought her case into the forefront. This is at a time when Kill the Bill was going on. It's still ongoing. And obviously we support Kill the Bill, which, if you don't know, isn't Kill the Bill as in kill the police. Police are sometimes called the bill in the UK, and I think there was some discrepancy of people not understanding that. It's a bill against, basically, the Conservative government are trying to make protests illegal in the UK, saying they're disruptive, which is a joke because
that's what
protests are meant to be disruptive.
It's like saying that the rail strikes are disruptive. Yes, that's why they're doing
the point.
It.
And we also support the rail strikes.
Yes, we do.
I understand they're very annoying for many people, but imagine if your jobs were getting cut and your pay wasn't representative of your job. That would be
imagine how annoying that is.
Yeah, we can't imagine. But yeah, so it got a lot of media attention. So today I wanted to speak about Sabina Nessa and what happened to her. Is this a name you're familiar with?
Yes, it is.
I think we've mentioned her before, to be fair.
Yeah, and just on the news as well, because again, and also I kind of guessed it was going to be one of these, like there was a few that all came out around the same time.
Yeah, they were actually within the span of about 18 months of each other.
All really close together, weren't they?
Zara Alina being the most recent. But I kind of can't help but wonder if the fact that we know less about Sabina and Zara Alina is because that they're not white women.
Yes.
Now, obviously, it could be because Zara Alina's case is still ongoing, as we said.
And they don't want to speak about it, which is
they don't want to speak
fair
about
enough.
it. Yeah. But there has to be a part of me that thinks that their race might come into play.
I completely agree, because I think something came out about that at the time, because there was a lot more about like other cases at the time, and a lot less. Yeah.
And, it's not that I want to make this about race necessarily, and I don't want to reduce them to just being women of colour. There's so much more, but also your race and your ethnicity and your heritage has a lot to do with who you are.
Oh, definitely.
And so it's also not something, when people say, I don't see colour, that's problematic too, because not seeing someone's heritage and how that adds to them as a person.
Yeah, not respecting their culture as well.
Yeah, that's very reductive and not helpful, because I used to say, I don't see colour, and I got corrected, and we learn and we move on.
Fair enough, good.
We grow. I do think, however, we have to think about the race thing as well when you think about a huge case such as Sarah Everard, who got loads of attention, rightly so. I mean, she was also killed by a Metropolitan Police officer.
Which I did think made the case a bit more high profile, but...
Yeah, and it also brought forward a lot of questions about the misogynistic and rape cultures within the UK police force.
Like one of the first ones as well, wasn't it, the Sarah Everard one?
Yeah, but then you have to compare it to a case like Sabina Nessa, who... I didn't know much about it at all until I started researching. And yet I feel like I know so much. So with that, I think it's time to talk about what happened to Sabina Nessa so that we get the word out a bit more.
Definitely.
Trigger warnings are sexual assault and also domestic violence. So if these are things that you can't listen to at the moment, we completely understand. We hope you're looking after yourself and getting any help that you may need and any support you may need. We'll see you next time. Sabina Nessa was 28 years old at the time of her death. She was raised in the market town of Sandy in Bedfordshire with her older sister. In 2014, she graduated from the University of Greenwich in London with a degree in sociology. And then she furthered her education by attending the University of Bedfordshire, to obtain her PGCE teaching certificate in 2020. After graduating, she soon landed a job at Rushy Green Primary School in Lewisham, South East London, where she taught a Year 1 class, which is no easy job.
Oh, God, no.
No. I think it's one of those things as well where like they're at a cute age, but they're also like a bit snotty.
Terrors.
They're very inquisitive, which is great, but a bit irritating.
Yeah, they're at that age where they're like, miss,
Yeah.
miss. And you're like, shut up.
And they might still have accidents as well, so you've got all the fun stuff going on.
Yeah.
And so it's weird to talk about this case as well because, like I said, this is all my home. I can picture these places. I got my nursing degree from Greenwich.
Oh, wow.
I did some of my nursing placements in Lewisham for the first 2 years. And I know this isn't about me, but I just mean I can really picture this case in this area.
Yeah, it's close to home for you.
In particular, where she ended up being murdered. I used to drive past there quite often as well. So I can just visualise it. And I could have met her. I could have walked past her multiple times. And it always hits a little bit closer to home, doesn't it? So on September 17th, 2021, Sabina left her home on Astle Road in Kidbrooke, an area of South East London, at around 8:30 p.m. She was on her way to meet a friend at the Depot pub in Kidbrooke Village, not far from Kidbrooke rail station. She had told friends how she was excited to meet this person. One article by Wales Online called this a date with a friend from her past, but I'm unsure if they use the term date in like a romantic or platonic sense. Like, I don't know if they're calling it a date or just like another way to say meet up.
Yeah, like when someone says to you, oh, we'll do this time this, and then you go, oh, it's a date.
Exactly.
But like it's not a date.
But either way, she was apparently looking forward to meeting this person. And I mean, like, it was a Friday night. She was probably working all week.
Yeah.
She was excited.
Fair enough.
Her walk to the pub was meant to take her all of 5 minutes across Cater Park. But unfortunately, she would never make it there. Despite being a no-show, however, she wasn't reported missing. And I'm unsure why this was really. I think it's easy in hindsight to say that they should have raised the alarm.
Yeah.
But I suppose at the time you just don't want to be dramatic.
No.
But I do want to say, if you're ever going to meet someone and they don't show and aren't answering their calls and texts, be dramatic.
Yeah.
Like, call other people who know them, report them missing. I'm not blaming the person for not doing this.
Oh, God, no. But
sadly,
maybe this is a learning experience for everybody. That maybe we should be a little bit more dramatic.
Yeah. I mean, you know what? What's the worst that can happen? Like, it can be called off and laughed off. Maybe someone's a bit annoyed with you for, like, being a bit extra.
But
they're alive and safe, hopefully. Yeah. Sadly, it does seem like this wouldn't have changed anything for Sabina. But I'm just saying.
Yeah.
If you're my friend and I don't meet up, be dramatic. Call Mikey, call my parents. Like, I'm not going to be annoyed with you. I'm going to be so happy that you took those steps in case I wasn't safe.
Yeah.
Because you never know, one day, sadly, someone might not be safe. Not in this way, but their car could have broken down. She could have fallen over and slipped and been on her own in a park. Like,
yeah,
something. You don't know. Be dramatic. We need that on a top. Be dramatic.
Be dramatic. I love it.
It would be the next day, on September 18th at 5:30 p.m, that dog walkers would find the body of Sabina Nessa under vegetation near the One Space Community Centre in Cater Park. It was quite a busy area, by the way.
Okay.
So she was quite well covered up near the vegetation, which I think is why dog walkers found her, because maybe their dogs were like...
probably went over and started sniffing. And
yeah, and they're like, get away, what are you doing?
Imagine finding that. Like, not... I don't want to say like it's one of my fears, but I honestly do not know how I would react if I was just out on a walk one day and I just like found a body. Especially
because I know this area in a very urban area.
Yeah.
This is very much a green space in an urban area.
Yeah.
This isn't like if you find a body in a countryside, like, obviously you're never expecting it, but it's a bit more like, oh,
someone's trying to hide this.
Yeah. Yeah. This is like a near a community centre in an urban green space.
Oh, wow. Okay. So lots of people walking past.
So many. I'm not sure if I know the exact park that they're talking about, but from what I know of the area, it's all like new build flats, and it's sort of got like a revamping in the last, I want to say 5, but it could be 10 years. And it's all like new build flats and new build community centre and everything. They've sort of remade this area a bit because it has got a reputation for being a little bit rough, as Lewisham does and the surrounding areas. It's a busy area. You've got lots of people living close by. You've got that community centre. It's a small green space. It's not some big, vast park. It's a South East London green space.
Okay, so it is not obvious where she was, but it wouldn't have taken long for someone to find the body.
Yeah. I mean, it was obviously well enough covered up that no one found her for, a whole day almost. When you look at a map, The Guardian put in their article, and I will try to put it on socials, but I'm sometimes a bit bad at doing what I say I'll do. You get a sense of how short Sabina's walk really was that evening, and how her body was found at about the halfway point of the walk. So it was a 5-minute walk, and that means that she was, say, 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes into the walk, meaning she was less than 3 minutes away from safety of the pub.
That does make it more upsetting, because to think as well that something like that could happen 3-minute walk away from your own house.
I mean, again, I feel like we reference this case more than any other case, but it reminds me of the Sally Ann Bowman case. She was so close to being home and through her front door.
Yeah, she lit at her front door. Well, my sister has literally moved around the corner from me, and if you walk through, there's a lane you can walk through, and it literally takes 5 minutes. But the lane's not very well lit, and she messaged me the other day saying, can I come over? And then she was like, oh, is it really lazy if I drive? And I said, no, because if you walk down that, I was like, I'm not letting you walk down that lane by yourself late at night. It's not lit. It's surrounded by bushes. Although I do live in a new build house, it's the bit that hasn't been built yet. So there's no houses around that bit yet. I was like, anything could happen to you there. I was like, drive to my house.
Exactly.
And it's things like this. And I'm like, but she shouldn't have to do that. I'm like, 5 minutes in between her house and my house, she should be able to walk it.
Exactly. She should be able to. But the fact is, all it takes is one absolute piece of shit to be down that alleyway waiting for someone.
Yeah.
Or to be walking down the alleyway at the same time. They don't even have to have planned it. They can just see someone on their own.
And just think, you know what? Tonight's the night.
Exactly. And it's just so scary. She was 3 minutes away from meeting her friend, having the great night she deserved, and continuing to live her life as she should have.
Yeah.
As she should be right now. She should still be living her life being a teacher or, whatever she wanted to be.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be talking about her right now.
No.
We shouldn't ever be talking about anyone, but...
Yeah, no, we shouldn't be able to have this podcast because it shouldn't happen. But...
It's heartbreaking to think that she was so close to being okay and all that was taken from her. But we see this time and time again. And who is responsible for Sabina Nessa's life being cut short? Kochi Salamaj was born on the 4th of May 1985, making him 36 years old when he murdered Sabina Nessa. Kochi was an Albanian-born man living in Eastbourne in East Sussex on the south coast of England, working at the time in a garage and delivering pizzas. Now, interestingly, on the night of September 17th, 2021, Kochi Salamaj checked into the Grand Hotel in Eastbourne, a reservation he had made 3 days prior, and then proceeded at around 5 p.m. to drive his Nissan Micra to South East London. Now, I'm unsure as to why he booked a hotel if he lived in the Eastbourne area, which he did. He apparently lived behind a row of shops.
Okay.
But, don't get it wrong, I see the appeal of staying in a hotel, even if it's just down the street from your home. Nice clean bedding, it's a nice clean room. I see it. It's a 5-star hotel as well, so I completely see it.
Yeah, me and Aidan have done it before just because we had a 3-night stay.
Yeah.
And the hotel was literally 10 minutes away from us. So we were like, yeah, why not?
Yeah, I would do it. But the only reason I can think of is, and this is just speculation, that perhaps he was trying to provide an alibi for himself provisionally.
Oh, okay.
I can't have been in London murdering someone if I was checked into a hotel in Eastbourne.
Yeah. Yeah. And if they saw him go in, I mean, they would have still seen him leave at the time of the murder took place, but...
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it's a foolproof plan, but, and it does seem stupid to me because I've done the drive multiple times myself. It's an hour and a half, 2 hours. So it's not as if it wouldn't be possible to do what he did. Drive, do it, drive back.
Yeah.
It's not a solid alibi, but hey... This is a theory, and actually we'll talk about it a little bit more later on. Because
he's tried to think about it, but...
Yeah, and there's maybe another reason, but we'll come on to that later on. When Kochi arrived in South East London, he went to the Sainsbury's local in Kidbrooke Village, where he bought a rolling pin, which he intended to use as a weapon. However, he ended up using an emergency traffic triangle he found on his way to the park. So I wasn't sure what that is, but basically it's a red reflective triangle. Most are around 40 to 50 centimetres tall and
They're
wide.
not big.
No, but the one that Kochi used was said in court to be 60 centimetres long and made of plastic and metal. But yeah, not very
Not
sturdy.
big, but no, yeah. Well, I guess it's got metal on it.
Kochi then made his way to Cater Park just before 8 p.m, situated a few short minutes' walk away, and hid in the bushes, waiting for a lone female to walk by. And this is so sinister and scary. Like, he hid in the bushes at like 8 p.m. Sabina left at home at around 8:30 p.m. It took her a few minutes to reach the spot he was at, and therefore he hid in the bushes, waiting for a victim for over 30 minutes.
So he wasn't just targeting her. He just
No.
was targeting women.
Oh yeah, it was just who? Like,
Yeah.
who am I going to come across?
Yeah, who gets there first?
Which is also scary because it means he didn't have a type other than a lone female.
Yeah.
You know, like some serial killers have a type. They've got, you know, like they like blondes, they like brunettes, they like black women, they like white women.
He just wanted
a
kill
woman.
someone.
And that makes it a lot scarier.
Yeah.
And I know it's not the longest time to wait. You've got killers like BTK. He used to wait for hours in victims' homes before they would come home, and then he would strike. But if you've ever been waiting to meet someone who's running late, for example, I think we all know that 30 minutes can feel like a lifetime.
Yeah.
And
Especially if you don't know what you're waiting. Like, he didn't know that there was going to be a lone female walking down there. So he could have been there. Like, he got there at 8 p.m. He could have been there till 3 a.m.
yeah, he could have been there indefinitely until he gave up and went home.
Yeah.
Like, I wish he had been.
How long was he going to be there for?
Exactly. And the patience and the discipline it takes to wait in anticipation for something, because he would have been waiting in anticipation. He would have been excited, I presume, like excited and nervous. Or
Yeah, your adrenaline is going to be going, isn't it?
But yeah, and honestly, it makes me feel kind of sick. And it's definitely going to make me look at wooded areas in a bit of a different light. You know, I've always sort of looked at, you know, as a woman, we look at areas like that lane near your house, like wooded areas in that sort of light. But I think this just really is a reminder that unfortunately people do wait in the dark. And so when Kochi spotted Sabina walking alone through the park, and apparently he like looked back and checked that she was alone, because some sources did say that he walked past her and then double checked she was alone. Obviously other sources say he waited in a bush.
Yeah.
Perhaps he sort of came out of a bush and, you know, was like wandering around stretching his legs. Either way, when he spotted her walking alone through the park, he saw his opportunity. He chased Sabina and then hit her over the head 34 times with the traffic triangle.
Wow.
He then took Sabina's body to the nearby bushes and strangled her to death.
Oh my God. So hitting her in the head didn't even kill her?
I think it just would have subdued her, because like you said, it's quite flimsy. It's hard, but it's not.
God. Yeah.
I mean, people can survive road traffic accidents with traumatic brain injuries. So afterwards, he removed her tights and underwear, exposing parts of her body, before covering her back up with grass and fleeing the scene. Then, of course, her body was discovered the next evening by a dog walker. Kochi was last seen at 9 p.m. before leaving London to drive back to Eastbourne. He stopped on the way near Tunbridge Wells in Kent to dispose of the traffic triangle in the River Tees. Or Tees, I don't actually know of that river, despite knowing the area somewhat well. The triangle had reportedly broken into bits during the brutal attack on Sabina. He arrived back at his hotel at around midnight. Initially, police actually arrested someone else in connection with Sabina's murder on the 18th of September, so the day she was found. A man in his 40s who wasn't named. He was then released under police investigation. And another man aged 38 would be arrested on Thursday the 23rd of September at an address in Lewisham on suspicion of Sabina's murder, but he too would be released without charge. Just a week after her murder, however, police released CCTV footage of a man near Cater Park that they wanted to speak to regarding the murder of Sabina Nessa. The footage showed 36-year-old Kochi Selimaj with his hood up. On Sunday, September 26th at 3 a.m, Kochi was arrested and taken into the custody of the Metropolitan Police, 9 days after the murder of the much-loved primary school teacher, with the licence plate of his Nissan Micra being used in the identification of him as a suspect. Reportedly, as he was arrested, Kochi remained calm and collected, laying on the bed when they entered his flat, never saying a word during the arrest. The search team then found his trainers and were able to analyse blood found on them to link him to the murder of Sabina. During questioning, Kochi remained silent, only breaking this when police charged him with the murder, asking, "What will happen if I tell you everything?" However, as he had been charged, police were unable to probe him further. And honestly, every time we cover a case, you'd think that my understanding of the legal system would improve, but you'd be wrong, because I don't really understand why they can't, when someone's charged, then probe them further.
Yeah. No, I don't really get how it works, to be fair.
But yeah, I don't really understand. And honestly, if anybody wants to clear this up and just be like a legal go-to, please, please be.
Yeah, if anyone can shed some insight.
Yeah, because apparently I know nothing. So he was charged with a murder and appeared in the Old Bailey on Thursday, December 16th. Interestingly, whilst Kochi would plead not guilty to the murder of 28-year-old Sabina Nessa, his barrister told the court that Kochi did accept responsibility for the killing. Which, I don't really understand that.
That just contradicts itself, right?
Yeah. My thinking is either some sort of insanity plea, but I think he'd be hard-pressed to go at that angle, seeing as how he planned and coordinated the attack.
And waited.
Yeah, so he drove a 130-mile round trip, he bought and found a weapon, he waited for 30 minutes, and then covered up the body of Sabina successfully enough that she wasn't found for over 20 hours in a busy park.
Yeah.
None of that screams insanity to me. Disgusted, perverted, evil, yes. Insane, no. I've met and I've worked with people who are in psychosis, and most do not have the focus to carry that out.
No.
And again, we've said this before, but it should be said that most people in a psychotic episode or mentally unwell are not dangerous to anyone but themselves.
Yeah, and it's the whole, as you said, he booked the hotel room, he'd driven, he waited, he double-checked that she was on her own. Mm-hmm. He bought a weapon. And then how can you say that you were insane at that time?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Alternatively, I guess he was trying to say it wasn't premeditated, and therefore you could say it was manslaughter. Regardless, Kochi would change his plea on February 25th from not guilty to guilty to the murder of Sabina Nessa on what was the first day of his trial, which was originally set to last 2 to 5 weeks. Perhaps he and his defence, they realised all the evidence that the prosecution had against him, such as, the blood evidence, the CCTV of his car and everything, and therefore knew that a plea of, non-meditated murder or insanity wouldn't hold. Yeah. But either way, at least Kochi's confession spared the family and friends of Sabina having to sit through a trial and hear all the evidence. Though, of course, this is not why I believe he changed his plea. I'm not going to sit here and give him any credit of being kind or thoughtful.
No. He probably realised that he wasn't going to win this very quickly and then changed it.
Yeah. However, this also meant that he didn't have to sit and endure the family's victim impact statements. They had to read them to an empty dock because he didn't attend his sentencing. And apparently they can't make someone attend their sentencing.
Really?
So they didn't get to read their impact statements probably to the one person that they really wanted to hear their impact statements.
Oh, I think that should be compulsory.
Oh, yeah.
Because of that reason.
It seems completely wrong that he can't be made to listen to the impact of what he's done to those who are hurting the most. And so on that day, on April 7th of this year, 2022, Kochi was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 36 years. Meaning he won't be eligible for release until 2057, when he is 72 years old. And whilst this is a long time, I still think at 72 he has life left to live. Sabina has no life.
Yeah.
She's no longer alive. She has no life left to live because of him. And sometimes that's when I think life should mean life, because I believe in rehabilitation, but sometimes I think that there's no justice in it.
Yeah.
For a crime like this.
Yeah, for a murder of someone completely innocent.
Exactly. Now, as you would expect of a man who kills women, as I said, he acted cowardly throughout, which is just shown by the fact that he didn't attend his sentencing hearing. And the police echoed my thoughts by calling him cowardly publicly. Detective Chief Inspector Neil John describing Kochi Selamaj as an evil coward, adding that it is highly unusual for someone to go from zero to a crime of this magnitude. And yeah, it's all the more terrifying, in my opinion, the fact that he had no criminal history.
Really? I was going to wait for you to like finish this whole story and then be like, okay, so what led to that? Like, that's what I was expecting to come.
Oh yeah, well, we get really angry that he was never like booked before.
Yeah, but he had nothing.
No, yeah, it's not a Mark Dixie where like this was going to happen. Why the fuck did no one stop him? Like, there was nothing to stop him.
Wow.
Like, there was no indicator that he was going to go and kill a woman.
How long had he lived in the UK for?
I believe, I didn't write it down, I believe he came in either 2015 or 2016.
Okay. I guess they would have still found something if he'd done... Was it Albania, you said that he was...
Yeah, so he had no criminal records in Albania.
Oh, wow.
None at all. In fact, I saw that they interviewed his uncle in Albania, who is completely shocked and saddened that his nephew is now a convicted murderer in the UK.
No, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. And honestly, they're victims as well.
Yeah.
Not quite so much, but they're still victims.
They've still lost their nephew.
Yeah, completely the nephew's own doing. But
they've still lost a family member, yeah.
And it's also such a brutal way. It's not like, I mean, every murder of anyone is brutal, but like the frenzied 34 times hitting someone.
And then I mean, we've talked about strangling so much on this podcast.
It's harder than people think, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, even his legal defence came out after the trial against him, with the barrister who headed his legal team, Lewis Power QC, telling the BBC he, meaning Kochi, has shown no remorse. He is as cold as ice. That is his legal defence.
Wow.
Yeah. Even his legal defence were like, yeah, he's fucked.
And there was nothing to like...
Well, actually, you saying that is a good segue into this. I've said segue a lot. Apparently it's my word of the day.
Nice.
He may have had a hidden violent side to him. Before he murdered Sabina Nessa, Kochi's marriage to his Romanian wife, who has not been named, had just ended in the summer of 2021, after 2.5 years together. His wife, whom it is speculated he may have married in order to legally stay in the UK, had endured months of violence from Kochi, with him apparently even putting his hands around her neck multiple times, which is even more chilling when you remember that he killed Sabina by strangling her.
Yeah, okay, so this is where it's starting to come out now, although he didn't have any record.
No, but his wife had left him because he was violent.
Because of that.
And also, like, good on her, that takes a lot of strength. It's also the most dangerous time in a woman's life if she's being abused by her partner. It's the most dangerous time when you actually leave that partner. And I believe they were still living together, maybe. I'm not entirely sure, it wasn't cleared up, but they might have still been living together. So she very much could have become a victim of him, and might have done had he not been caught quickly. Now, some clue as to why Kochi may have booked a room at the Grand Hotel for September 17th could lie in the fact that his wife, whom he was separated from, worked there. So reportedly he became argumentative with staff at the check-in desk, and they sort of noticed that his address was nearby and were a bit... I don't know if they kind of matched up that of who he was, or whether they were like, he's nearby, why has he even booked this room? I don't know why that really matters that his address was nearby if he was being argumentative. But the staff called the police on their non-urgent crime number 101. But no police attendance was necessary. They were able to offer advice over the phone, and the situation was sort of dealt with, apparently.
Okay, so he wasn't being really, really abusive then. He obviously, they flagged it up as being concerning.
I mean, abusive enough that they called the police. I imagine they're used to having, some people be dickheads, but...
Yeah.
Kochi later met his wife in his car in the hotel car park that day, where he asked her for sex, but she rejected him. It was then that Kochi drove off and ended up in southeast London. So it could have been as well he was pissed off with women. Yeah. There's an entitlement there, which we see time and time again with men who commit crimes against women. There tends to be a sense of entitlement and what they believe they are entitled to. Yeah. Additionally, this paired with the undressing of Sabina led police to believe that this was a sexually motivated attack.
Do you know what? As soon as you said about he undressed her slightly, I did think there's some sexual element in this.
Even if it's just, I say just, but even if it's to look at her. Yeah. That's a crime. However, thankfully, there was no sign of sexual assault found to Sabina.
Phew.
Obviously, there was sexual assault because he undressed her and looked at her body without her consent, but
No physical.
yeah. Now, when looking up Kochi, you might see speculation as to whether he was legally or illegally in the UK at the time, with reports that he originally came to England illegally from Greece. I think it was in the back of a lorry. But I just want to say first and foremost that I'm not here for any xenophobic or racist comments that anyone might bring to this case.
Yeah.
He did this because he was a piece of shit, not because he entered this country from elsewhere in Europe, legally or illegally. This is not a debate about immigration. I personally think everyone's welcome.
The amount of people that immigrate to this country and don't murder people.
Yeah. But you know what people are like. They'll always use things for their agenda.
Yeah.
I additionally don't want to hear any victim blaming, which of course people have tried to do. Because Sabina Nessa was walking through a park in the dark alone. And okay, yes, this is something that we're told as women not to do. You know, we've touched on it. But it's the fact that we should be able to do this.
Also, 8 o'clock. Yes, it might have been dark, but 8's not late.
No, and that's probably what she told herself. Like, oh, it's not even that late.
Yeah. Also, I'm assuming in the park, somewhere she's walked multiple times, probably thought it was quite safe, around the corner from her house, probably quite well lit. Because I've done it before, like there's a park near where my mum lives, but past a certain time of day, I wouldn't walk through the park because it's not well lit. I'd walk around it. I'd go the longer way around.
But had it been well lit, you might have chosen to
go through it, yeah. So I'm assuming this route was quite well lit.
Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but the fact is we should be able to walk through parks on our own in the dark.
Yeah.
And we should be able to do this time and time again. And the fault will never lie on the woman who takes a shortcut.
No.
Or the man who takes a shortcut. It'll always lie on the person who murdered them.
Yeah.
Not their choice to take a shortcut. However, many times we're told not to. That's not the point. And I don't want to hear victim blaming. Heartbreakingly, she wouldn't normally have taken the shortcut as well.
Oh, really?
She normally would have done what is ingrained into all women. As in the past, she had discussed with her friends how important it is to stick to a main road. But that night she was running late. It really makes me sad because I think it just shows how, sadly, due to scumbags such as Kochi Selimaj, decisions like this cost women their lives. You know, ultimately it's his decision that cost her life.
I can imagine a lot more victim blaming came out of this because they were like, oh, well, if she had taken the main road, this wouldn't have happened to her. But as you said, again, she shouldn't have had to.
No.
She should be able to take the shortcut if she's running late and nothing should happen to her.
And the thing is, like, I can imagine in my head how Sabina might have weighed it up. Like, oh, it's only a 3-minute walk. Oh, it's only 8:30. Oh, it's well lit maybe. Yeah, it's just this once. I'll be fine. But sadly, you only have to come across a creep like this just once. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
Understandably, her family have been completely devastated by the loss of Sabina.
God, I bet.
Her cousin, Zubair Ahmed, told the BBC that Sabina's parents and sisters are inconsolable, describing Sabina herself as the most caring person, the kindest, sweetest girl you could meet, adding that back home her cats are looking for her.
Oh, not
I know. As 2 cat owners and lovers, that's extra.
I know. Deli
stab.
walked in as you said that as well and just came up to me to stiff my hand.
He went on to call her a beautiful soul who loved teaching and loved kids. It really did seem like, from everything that was said, even the head teacher spoke out about the loss and how profound it was, and they've made a garden for her. At a vigil for Sabina Nessa that took place shortly after her murder, her sister, Jabina Yasmin Nessa, told those that had come out for Sabina, "Words cannot describe how we are feeling. This feels like we are stuck in a bad dream and can't get out of it. Our world is shattered. We are simply lost for words. No family should go through what we are going through." And yet, sadly, families in the UK are still going through similar nightmares, with the aforementioned killings of Ashlyn Murphy and Zara Alina. The head of the Metropolitan Police at the time, Cressida Dick, said that women were safe on the streets of London. But that simply isn't true.
Nope.
Zara herself was killed in East London. Sabina's case was also compared to the murders of Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman in June 2020 in northwest London, where 2 police officers shared selfies of them with the dead sisters' bodies in the background.
Oh,
and
wow.
Yeah, this is a case that I've listened to Case File cover.
Yeah.
Is it Case File or was it They Walk Among Us? I think it might have been They Walk Among Us, which is a UK-based true crime podcast.
Listen to it,
but this is a case I do want to cover. But it's so disgusting that how the police acted that I think I'm going to have to prepare myself for it. But again, it's women of colour and police officers taking selfies with the dead bodies. Not only is that messed up, but they then felt confident enough in the culture to send it on WhatsApp to other police officers. And who knows who else.
That's awful.
Yeah.
It really destroys your faith in the police. Like, and I know it's not all police officers. Like, there are good ones, and it's probably, again, sadly, the few ruining it for the many, but nothing shatters your faith in them like something like this.
You have instances like this, and you think, hang on, there has to be a culture, because in order to feel safe enough to post those stories, take that picture, first of all, the two of you together taking that picture, so clearly you both share this point of view that that's okay, but to then have a culture that makes it that you're confident enough to share that in a group chat, and then you have people like, the guy's name has completely gone from my head now, but the man who killed Sarah Everard, who was a Metropolitan Police officer, who was known as a bit rapey.
Oh, that's... Yeah. I think the worst thing about it as well is that the police are supposed to be the people to keep you safe.
Yeah.
Like, if you are worried that someone is stalking you late at night and you see a police officer, that should make you feel safer.
And yet for Sarah Everard, that was the person who killed her.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I know that Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman's mother said that, it was sort of reminiscent almost of like lynchings and stuff, having police officers comfortable to take pictures of dead bodies of black people. It made them think of lynchings when that was endorsed by police officers, or not endorsed, but okayed almost back in the day.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Like, fair. That's a fair comment.
In fact, I was reading today on Twitter or Instagram about how in 2018 the police set up a fake record shop with a recording studio out back to pretend to be part of the community and get mostly black men within the community implicated in crimes, but like literally not catching criminals, like, not gaining their trust and hearing about what they're doing, literally asking black men to get them heroin, being like, oh, do you know where to get heroin from? And then not taking down the person that they got heroin from,
taking down them,
but taking down them. And it's like, what crimes are you solving there? You asked someone to get something, and so they trusted you, and they did, but you haven't taken down the supplier.
Yeah, so you've not stopped the problem.
You just put an innocent black man in prison.
Yeah. Yeah, you've just not added to the problem, but you've just made the problem more ongoing.
Exactly. And I can see, I don't hate police officers, but I can completely see why people lose faith in them.
Yeah, definitely.
I do also think they do a hard job.
Especially in these minority communities.
Exactly. I appreciate they do a hard job. I work with police often in my role. I see that they do a hard job. I see that they get spat at. I saw one get bitten the other day.
I've got friends who are in the police.
Yeah,
and they're not police officers, but they're in the police force.
I've got family members, and I see, and it's a very thankless job because the public is very against them.
Yeah.
Particularly in, poorer areas where they are more highly policed, and therefore no wonder there's a higher crime rate because they're more highly policed.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to think, well, maybe there's reasons why you have this reputation.
Yeah.
It's difficult, and I'm never sure where I stand. But ultimately with the victims. Again,
it's one of those topics of conversation that me and you I feel like we could really delve into a rabbit hole and do a whole podcast episode just on.
And also, as two white women, I think we'll never completely understand what it would be like to be a person of colour.
No.
And living in an impoverished area that's, like I said, more highly patrolled by police.
Yeah.
And so shock horror, there's going to be more arrests because there's more police there to arrest people. And getting back to the case, the murders of Sabina, Nessa and Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman have been compared due to the lack of media coverage and outrage that seemed to happen that when women of colour are murdered compared to that of white women, such as Sarah Everard.
Yeah.
And when you consider that the murder of Sabina Nessa didn't even make front page news, you really start to see the differences in reporting. Yes, she had vigils that had thousands, just like Sarah Everard, but, you know, not making front page news. Apparently, one Twitter user even tweeted that it was on page 25. Like, they were like, page 25, like, outraged.
Wow.
And that tweet later went viral, hence why I even know about it.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
It's mad. The chief executive of Women's Aid, Farah Nazir, rightly said that Sabina Nessa's death was as unacceptable and shocking as that of any other woman, and our headlines, TV coverage and outrage in our social media posts should reflect this. And as an article I read by the National Post pointed out, even international cases such as Gabby Petito become huge breaking news in the UK. And isn't it odd that she happens to be a white woman? And yet the article goes on to compare this to the case of Tiffany Foster, a black woman who also went missing in the US and who did not get the same coverage as Gabby Petito. And yeah, I haven't heard of her. No. And so tonight I will rectify this and I will learn all about her and her case, and perhaps we'll discuss it.
It is. As much as people are like, oh no, it's not about race, it is. At the end of the day.
We don't hear about black women going missing as much. We don't hear about, in America, native women going missing as much.
No.
And it's just more accepted. And so I do think going forward, in order to make this a more ethical podcast, I do want to cover more cases of women of colour, because even looking back, we've covered a lot of cases of white women and white victims.
Because that's the ones we tend to hear about more, because that tends to be what's on the news.
But it's up to us to do better.
Yeah.
And it's up to me to research better, especially as a white woman. I should be looking to be an ally.
Yeah.
So that is something that we're going to change. That's not to say we're not going to cover crimes against white people, but I just think it's good to be aware that we should be covering cases that are representative of the demographic of where we live.
Yeah.
But I just think the takeaway from this is that we have to ask ourselves why we know Sarah Everard's name, and why, I'm not going to lie, when we've referred to Sabina in the past, I couldn't remember her last name.
Yeah.
And that's wrong. I should have.
It's just what we're shown on the news.
Yeah. And so therefore, if we're not going to be showing it on the news, it is up to us to learn about it.
Yeah.
To read about it. So, of course, our hearts go out to Sabina Nessa's family and friends. And, you know, it still goes out to Sarah Everard's family and friends, Ashlyn Murphy's, Bieber Henry's, Nicole Smallman, Zara Alina.
It shouldn't happen to anyone.
No. And the fact will remain, as we said before, women should be able to walk where the fuck they like. Mm-hmm. And men should just not fucking murder them. People should not murder them.
Yeah, people should just stop murdering.
We're very brave to come out and say that people shouldn't murder, I think.
Yeah. I don't think it's talked about enough.
No, I don't think so. And so I guess there's nothing else to say, because we're just going to be getting ourselves more and more wound up. But yeah, I hope you understand why we took a little break from true crime. I didn't say why, but that was why. I hope you understand that we are going to try and be a bit more representative of where we're from and our beliefs in justice. And welcome back, Jess, as well. I know you obviously were back last week, but welcome back to True Crime Land.
I quite enjoyed it, not having to do anything but turn up. So now I've got to go and find some ghost stories for next week.
Yeah, and as always, we need you to email them in. Otherwise, Jess is going to have to return to Reddit, and we all know that that's not always the best place in the world.
No, I have to always rewrite them as well, because they're not as well written as the emails I get. Or I'm just going to have to go on one of those ghost tours that I sent you and have my own experience.
Well, we live in hope.
We live in hope. But to do that, I need money, so...
Yeah. Also, just to let you know that first of all, Simon is off visiting his partner next week, and therefore we are going to try and get an episode out to you, but it might be myself or my partner, who has a full-time job, editing it, so it might be a little bit late, or it might not happen. We're really sorry if that's the case. Also, we are going to take a 2-week break over Christmas and New Year, just because, you know, we have friends and family we want to see and spend time with as well. I might try and do some more sort of Patreon sneak peeks to get you guys excited for Patreon.
Ooh, I'm excited.
But I can't promise anything, because I still work full-time as well. And also another exciting thing, we might be teaming up with an amazing artist, a local Bristol artist called Lois Goody, to bring some merch. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Anything your end, Jess, that you want to add?
No.
Thank you for your contribution.
Yeah. Once I'm in a bit more of a routine, I'll try and do some more stuff too, but
yeah, it's okay. You've got a child.
Yeah, I mean, she couldn't even go this whole hour and 25 minutes without interrupting.
Oh yeah, just because you might have missed it. Jess actually had to breastfeed for one part of this. So once again, just letting you all know that we are a small budget podcast. And so, as usual, all that's left to be said is stay spooky. Hey guys, if you have a ghost story or a case suggestion, please email us truecrimecovenpod@gmail.com.
You can also find us on Twitter at truecrimecoven or on Instagram and Facebook where we are at truecrimecovenpod.
Also, it would mean the absolute world to us if you could rate us wherever you're listening to this right now, be it Spotify, Apple Music, or if you're on YouTube, give us a little thumbs up, click that bell, get notifications every time we post.
Subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts from.
Make these two witches smile. Thanks, witches!